You've got this multi-billion-dollar industry that pretty much operates in the shadows. And then you have this incredibly powerful grassroots movement of survivors that rises up to drag it kicking and screaming into the light. This is the story of the fight against the troubled teen industry. And it's also the story of how that very fight turned inward, pitting survivor against survivor in a huge battle over control, over data, and really over the very nature of truth itself. Okay, let's get into it. So just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're talking about, look at this number. At any given moment, right now, in the United States, there are an estimated 120,000 to 200,000 kids being held in these so-called troubled teen facilities. We're talking about a massive network of private programs, wilderness camps, boarding schools, all operating with shockingly little federal oversight. So to fight back against all of the documented abuse, and we're talking physical, psychological, you name it, survivors created a movement. They used the hashtag breaking code silence, and they took to social media to just pour out their stories, expose this industry, and fight back against something called code silence. That was a punishment they'd get where they were literally forbidden from speaking, sometimes for months at a time. And this is where the whole thing just gets, really complicated. It's the central paradox of this whole story. Right when the movement was gaining this incredible, unprecedented momentum, it just shattered. The organization that was built to empower survivors started filing lawsuits against some of its own original creators. So how on earth did that happen? Well, to understand it, you have to look at two figures who are surprisingly similar. Yeah, the key to unlocking this whole conflict comes from a really unexpected place, a parallel between two people who happen to share a last name, but are separated by half a century. We're talking about Robert McNamara, the architect of the Vietnam War, and Catherine McNamara, a central figure in the TTI survivor movement. Okay, so first things first, we gotta talk about this concept, the McNamara fallacy. It's named for Robert McNamara, the US Secretary of Defense. And what it describes is this huge error in judgment. It's when you make a decision based only on the stuff you can measure with numbers, and you completely ignore everything else, the things you can't quantify, no matter how critical they are. So back in Vietnam, McNamara's whole thing was this systems analysis approach to war. Their key metric for success? The enemy body count. Seriously, if the numbers showed more of the enemy were dead, they thought, hey, we're winning. But that focus on just one number, it completely missed the reality on the ground. The political will of the North Vietnamese, the morale of American troops, the whole complex nature of guerrilla warfare. They were measuring the wrong thing. And that obsession with a simple number led to absolutely disastrous miscalculations. And this is where that parallel just clicks into place. It's kind of wild. On one side, you've got Robert McNamara with his data-obsessed centralized war strategy. And on the other, you have Catherine Kitty McNamara, a leader in the survivor movement who built this colossal archive of over 100,000 records on the TTI. Her strategy became heavily reliant on data, on centralizing control of the story, and on using really aggressive litigation. The methods, when you put them side by side like this, they're strikingly similar. It suggests this shared belief that a really complex human problem, whether it's a war or a survivor movement, can be managed and won if you just have enough data and you're aggressive enough. So what happens when you apply this kind of thinking to a grassroots movement? Well, it gets messy. It led to a massive split. Let's walk through the timeline of how this once unified movement just broke apart. Okay, so it all kicks off in September 2020. Paris Hilton's documentary drops, and it's a game changer. Suddenly, the movement has global attention. But with that success came all new pressures. By March 2021, a formal nonprofit is created, but that move causes a huge rift with the original founders. And then, just 2 months later, the new organization with Catherine McNamara on its board sues several of the people who started the whole thing. So from one side of the fight, from the perspective of the original founders, the new leadership was using these tactics of control that felt, eerily similar to the very institutions they were all fighting against. Their website, bcsfacts.com, talks about power plays and systems that were designed to silence anyone who disagreed. But of course, that's only one side of the story. Catherine McNamara's camp, they have a completely different take. They frame these lawsuits as a totally necessary step to fight back against harmful rumors and establish what they call a factual reclaimed truth. So for them, litigation wasn't a tool of control, it was a tool for clarity to cut through what they saw as destructive lies. All this infighting, it creates this kind of fog of activism. While these two main factions were battling it out for control of the narrative, Other voices and other theories, some of them pretty controversial, were really struggling to be heard.
Take this claim from Kari Bunn. She's a survivor and a filmmaker, and she really represents one of those more marginalized voices. She puts forward this theory that the TTI's origins are actually linked to old government mind control experiments like MKUltra. She's basically arguing that the industry's behavior modification techniques have a way darker history than most people realize.
And the division, it got personal. I mean, really personal. Critics of Catherine McNamara's leadership started using this derogatory term, the Barbie bitch cult, to describe what they saw as her exclusive inner circle. This post from Reddit just shows you the raw anger. The term actually got so well known that it spawned its own line of merchandise on a website, which just goes to show you how deep and toxic the infighting really became. And you can actually see this split in where people are allowed to speak. Voices like Kari Bunn with her theories about MKUltra, you can find documentation of her appearing on independent podcasts like The Cult Vault, but her perspective is noticeably missing from the major mainstream advocacy platforms like the official Breaking Code Silence organization and Unsilenced. It really highlights what critics were saying about a centralized control over the story. So where does that leave us? What can we learn from this fog of activism? How does a movement that's all about justice get so tangled up in its own internal war? Well, believe it or not, to find an answer, we have to go all the way back to the man whose name kicked this whole thing off, the original McNamara. In the amazing documentary, The Fog of War, Robert McNamara, late in his life, offered lessons from his failures in Vietnam. And lesson number 8 is just so powerful. Be prepared to re-examine your reasoning. He basically said that if you can't convince other reasonable people that you're right, you should seriously question your own logic. It's a huge warning against being so certain, so sure you're right that it completely blinds you. And at the end of the day, here's what's so important. Despite all the infighting, the fight against the troubled teen industry did achieve real, concrete legislative change. And that's thanks to the passionate work of survivors from all sides of this ugly divide. But this internal war, it raises this huge question for any kind of modern activism. When a fight for justice starts using the tools of systems analysis, relying on massive data archives and legal battles to create one official truth, what happens to all the messy, complicated human stories, especially the ones that might point to a darker, more complex history? Who gets to decide which truth is the one that counts, and whose experience just gets dismissed as noise in the data?